My groom ran away on our wedding day. Weeks later, I found out he had married someone else. Furious, I tracked them down. His new wife was just as shocked as I was when I said, "We're both married to the same man." I will never forget the moment I stood at the altar, my heart racing, my hands gripping my bouquet so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The room was packed, friends, family, people who had traveled from far just to witness this day. The air smelled of fresh roses and vanilla from the towering wedding cake in the reception hall. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But my groom never showed up. At first, I thought maybe he was just running late. Traffic, maybe. A wardrobe issue. His phone went straight to voicemail, and his groomsmen, who had been with him that morning, were just as confused as I was. They said he had left the hotel, fully dressed, excited for the day ahead. But somewhere between that hotel and the church, he vanished. The guests whispered. My maid of honor held my hand, trying to keep me calm, but I could see the pity in her eyes. The officiant looked at me, waiting for direction. And my mother, oh, my poor mother, was already fighting back tears of humiliation. We waited an hour. Then another. Finally, someone had to say it. He's not coming. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I ran out of the church, still in my dress, gasping for air, my mind racing with every possible explanation. Maybe he got into an accident. Maybe something terrible happened. But deep down, a horrible thought crept in. Maybe he just didn't want to marry me. The next few weeks were a blur. I was too embarrassed to face anyone. I shut myself in my apartment, ignoring calls, avoiding social media, dreading the inevitable gossip. My mother tried to be strong for me, but I could hear the disappointment in her voice every time she said, "I just don't understand what went wrong." Then, one day, my best friend showed up at my door, her face pale. "You need to see this." She shoved her phone at me, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a wedding announcement. A wedding that had taken place just days after mine was supposed to. The groom in the photos. The man smiling happily, holding another woman's hands. It was my fiancé. I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. He was dressed in a suit I had never seen before, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. The caption read, "A beautiful beginning for a beautiful couple." I couldn't breathe. "Who is she?" I managed to whisper. My best friend shook her head. "I don't know. But I'm going to find out." And we did. With some digging, we discovered that this woman, his new wife, had no idea he had been engaged to someone else. She wasn't some secret affair, some hidden lover he had been seeing behind my back. No. She was just as clueless as I had been. And that's when I made the decision. I was going to find her. And I was going to tell her the truth. I tracked them down to a small town just a few hours away. I rehearsed what I would say over and over again in my head. I imagined the confrontation, imagined the look on his face when he saw me standing there. I arrived at their house on a warm Saturday afternoon. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, it was the kind of day that should have been peaceful. But my heart was pounding as I walked up to their front door and knocked. A moment later, she answered. She was beautiful. Not in a way that made me jealous, just in a way that made me sad. She had a kind face, warm eyes, and when she saw me, she smiled politely. "Hi, can I help you?" I took a deep breath. "I think we need to talk." She frowned slightly, but before she could ask anything else, I said the words that would change everything. "We're both married to the same man." Her face went pale. "What?" I nodded, my hands shaking. "He was supposed to marry me just weeks before he married you. He left me standing at the altar. I don't know what he told you, but I need you to know the truth." She didn't speak for a long time. I could see her mind working, trying to piece things together, trying to deny the impossible. Then, finally, she whispered, "Come inside." And that was just the beginning. Because what we uncovered next was far worse than I could have ever imagined. I followed her into the house, still clutching the folder of proof I had brought, our engagement photos, copies of emails, texts, even receipts for the deposits I had paid for the wedding that never happened. My mind raced with doubt. Would she believe me? Would he show up and deny everything? The house was small but cozy. Framed photos hung on the walls, pictures of the two of them laughing together, holding hands, looking impossibly happy. A picture-perfect life. A life that could have been mine. She motioned for me to sit at the dining table, her hands trembling as she poured us each a glass of water. I could tell she was already shaken, even before I said another word. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Naomi," I said. "Okay, Naomi," she replied. "I'm Clara." "Start from the beginning." I told her everything. From the moment I met him to the day he disappeared from my wedding. I didn't sugarcoat it. I showed her the photos, the wedding invitation, even the messages he had sent me the night before our wedding, saying how excited he was to spend the rest of his life with me. Clara didn't say much. She just sat there, staring at the evidence, her face a mix of disbelief and quiet heartbreak. When I was done, she finally spoke. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've been together for 3 years. 3 years. He proposed to me almost a year ago. How could he do this?" I blinked. 3 years. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I have photos of us from 2 years ago. Trips we took, holidays we spent together. He's been living with me for over a year now." I froze. If what she was saying was true, then this wasn't just a case of him leaving me for another woman. He had been living a double life for years. Before we could say more, the front door opened. We both turned toward the sound, and there he was. The man I was supposed to marry. The man who had built an entire life with another woman. He froze in the doorway when he saw me, his face going pale as he realized what was happening. "Naomi," he stammered. "What are you doing here?" Clara stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I think the better question is what you're doing, Nick." Nick. I had never even known his full name. What followed was pure chaos. Clara demanded answers. I demanded answers. He stumbled over his words, trying to explain, but everything he said just made it worse. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," he said, his voice shaky. "I was going to tell you both, tell us what?" Clara shouted. "That you're a liar. That you've been stringing us both along. That you're married to both of us. I thought you loved me." I yelled, my voice cracking. "I do love you," he said, looking at me. Then he turned to Clara. "And I love you, too." That was when it hit me. This wasn't a man who had made a mistake. This was a man who thought he could have everything. After a few minutes of back and forth yelling, Clara cut him off. "Enough," she said, her voice cold. "We're not doing this here. Naomi, come with me." I followed her upstairs, leaving him in the kitchen, looking like a deer in headlights. Clara led me to their bedroom, where she pulled a shoebox down from the closet. "You're not going to believe this," she said, dumping the contents onto the bed. Inside the box were cards, love letters, photos, and plane tickets. Plane tickets to places he had told me we would visit someday. A postcard from Paris. A receipt for a hotel in New York. Clara held up one of the photos. It was of the two of them at a beach, on the same weekend he had told me he was at a work retreat. My stomach churned. How had I been so blind? We spent hours comparing notes. Text messages, dates, anniversaries. The timeline was a mess, and it became clear that Nick, if that was even his real name, had been juggling us like some twisted game. But then Clara found something that made everything even worse. A bank statement. It was from a joint account they shared, and as she scrolled through the transactions, her face went pale. "These charges," she said, pointing to a long list of withdrawals. "They're not mine. I didn't authorize these." She handed me the statement, and my blood ran cold. One of the charges was to the same wedding venue I had booked. The one I had paid a deposit for. "Wait," I said. "Are you saying he's been using your money to pay for things for me?" Clara's hands were shaking as she nodded. By the time we went back downstairs, Nick was gone. His car was no longer in the driveway, and his phone went straight to voicemail. Clara sat down at the table, her face in her hands, while I paced the room, trying to figure out what to do next. "Should we call the police?" I asked. "For what?" Clara said bitterly. "For breaking our hearts." But then she looked up, her eyes fierce. "No. Not yet. I want answers first." The next few days were a whirlwind. Clara and I worked together, piecing together every bit of information we could find about Nick. Social media accounts, old emails, anything that might give us a clue about who he really was and where he might have gone. And what we discovered was worse than anything we could have imagined. There wasn't just me. There wasn't just Clara. There were others. For days, Clara and I dug deeper. What started as heartbreak turned into determination. We weren't just two women who had been deceived. We were two women who deserved justice. And then we found them. The others. It started when Clara went through her bank statements again and found another name on a transaction, a rental payment for an apartment she had never heard of. When we searched for the address, we found it belonged to a woman named Sophia. Sophia was another fiancée. When we called her, she thought it was a joke. "That's impossible," she said. "I'm engaged to Nick. We're getting married next summer." Silence. Then, just like Clara, just like me, Sophia's voice broke. "Oh my goodness." After that, the pieces fell into place faster than we could process them. A few late-night searches, a few calls to old acquaintances, and suddenly, there was a fourth woman. Then a fifth. Nick, if that was even his real name, had been playing this game for years. Engaged to multiple women, promising each of us a future, using money from one to fund gifts for another. And whenever things got too complicated, he disappeared. But this time, he had disappeared from the wrong people. We weren't just going to let him get away. So we made a plan. Clara, Sophia, and I spent days gathering evidence. Screenshots, bank statements, photos, old messages, everything. Then we tracked down the last phone number he had used and traced it back to a new job he had just started in another city. He thought he could run. But we were going to ruin him. Step 1 was public exposure. We created a shared folder full of proof, pictures of all of us with him, messages where he made the same empty promises, screenshots of transactions where he used one woman's money to take another woman on a trip. Then, we sent that folder to everyone he knew. His boss. His co-workers. His landlord. His family. His friends. Within hours, his phone must have been blowing up. But we weren't done. Step 2 was financial consequences. Clara filed fraud claims with her bank for every unauthorized charge he had made. Since the account was in her name, the bank launched an investigation. That meant freezing the account and potentially pursuing legal action. Sophia went after the deposits he had made for their future home, which had been funded with my wedding money. She sent the rental company proof of his fraud and got his lease terminated. And me? I made sure every wedding venue, florist, and travel agency in the area knew his name. If he ever tried to pull this stunt again, they'd recognize him instantly. Step 3 was personal humiliation. We waited until we knew he was at work, then showed up together. Clara, Sophia, me, and even one of the other women he had ghosted years ago. We walked right into his office lobby and asked for him by name. The receptionist looked confused but called him down. When he saw us standing there, 4 furious women with folders of proof, his face turned ghost white. The entire office went silent. People stopped what they were doing, watching the scene unfold. "Surprise," Clara said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Looks like you forgot to mention a few things to your coworkers." "You know," I added, "like the fact that you proposed to multiple women and stole thousands of dollars from them." Murmurs started. People whispered. A manager stepped forward, frowning. "Is this true?" Nick stammered, trying to deny it, but we didn't let him. We handed the manager a printed folder full of everything. His lies. His fraud. The proof of how he played all of us. Nick tried to grab the papers, tried to stop us, but it was too late. Security was called. His manager's face turned red with anger. "Get out," he told Nick. "You're fired." Just like that, his life started crumbling. A week later, he tried reaching out to me. Then to Clara. Then to Sophia. None of us answered. He had lost his job. His accounts were frozen. His landlord had kicked him out. And his family, oh, they were furious. His mother sent us an email apologizing for his behavior, horrified by what she had learned. She had no idea he had been doing this for years. Nick went from a man who thought he could have everything to a man who had nothing. And the best part? He did it all to himself. Clara, Sophia, and I became friends after everything. We met up often, laughing about the ridiculousness of it all, sharing updates whenever we heard new gossip about where Nick had ended up. Last we heard, he was living in a tiny rented room, working a low-paying job just to stay afloat. He had no fiancées, no lavish gifts, no one left to lie to. And as for me, I moved on. It took time, but I healed. I found someone new, someone honest, someone kind. And when I finally walked down the aisle for real, I didn't have to worry about an empty altar. Because this time, I knew I was marrying a man who was actually worth it. And Nick? He'll spend the rest of his life wondering how everything fell apart. But we know. And that's all that matters.